Hello, everyone. Hold on, I haven't done this in so long. I can't see everybody. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Like Ash said, Chris is going to be teaching you to paint this fall welcome sign in just about an hour. If you have any questions, let us know and we can try to answer them while we are live. So, Chris, take it away.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Kira, and thanks, Ash. I'm so thrilled to be here with everyone again this evening for another Let's Paint Night with Michael's Community Classroom. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Williams, and I get to be your lead teacher this evening. And tonight I'm going to share with you this fabulous stenciled welcome wreath, but we are not going to only learn a little bit of stenciling using this great plaid Project Studio stencil. I'm probably in forward, not overhead yet. And so besides using the stencil, we're also going to do a little bit of hand painting embellishments to create this really fun project. And let me tell you at the beginning, this is a super stencil because although we've done it today in fall colors and embellished with some fall florals, think about doing this at Christmas time in reds and greens, and our berries are now red berries rather than orange berries. And in the springtime, change it out for spring colors. So this is a stencil that will live with you all year long. I just love this stencil. So let's just go ahead and get right into it because we have a lot to cover this evening. Before we begin stenciling, you might want to grab a hair dryer if you don't already have one near you, because we are going to paint our background first and completely let that dry before we stencil part of our wreath and then embellish it with the decorative painting. The colors I'm working with today are FolkArt colors, and we're going to tonight work with the multi-surface colors. However, you can also use the FolkArt original colors if you don't have the multi-surface. The multi-surface paints are just that. There are paints that are formulated to go on a multitude of surfaces. Besides our canvas that we're painting tonight, it works on wood, on tin, on terracotta, on fabric, on glassware, so many different types of surfaces. And it dries to a gorgeous satin finish. It's water-based, non-toxic, and it's a great paint. If you don't have that and you're working with the original formula of FolkArt, that is super fine as well. And that paint, just so you know, it dries to a matte finish versus a satin finish. The colors I'm going to be working with this evening are Pueblo, Bark Brown, Pure Orange, Thicket, Yellow Ochre, Coffee Latte, Wicker White, and Violet Pansy. And all of those were colors that were listed on the supply list that you found when you registered for this class. My surface is a 12 by 12 stretched canvas. And so let's just dive right in and get started. I'm going to squeeze out onto, I'm working on a very large wax paper palette here. And I'm going to go ahead and squeeze out a pretty good sized portion of the white. And I'm using Wicker White. If you don't have Wicker White, you can also use titanium white. And I'm also going to put out a pretty good sized chunk of our Coffee Latte. And we're going to do a technique that I call slip slap. We're going to use a large flat brush. This is a 3/4 inch flat brush. And I'm going to load that brush so that I have white. Are we overhead now? Okay, perfect. Sorry, we're going to load it so that we have white mostly on all of the brush and maybe just a little bit. You can see I kind of split my brush here a little bit. Just a little bit, we'll have our Coffee Latte. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stroke into the puddle of the white. And again, I'm using Wicker White. Then I'm going to come to the puddle where my Coffee Latte is and pick up just a little bit of that. So when I stroke it out, you can see that I have white all the way over to Coffee Latte, but it's not quite half and half. So with that loaded brush, I'm now going to, want to make sure you can see me. I'm now going to start in my upper left corner, and I'm going to slip and then flip the brush over and slap, slip and slap, and slip and slap, and overlap a little bit. I want to keep a mottled look. I do not want it completely blended. I do want to see some brush strokes. And I'll show you this one, bringing it up close so you can see there is a mottled background behind our stencil. So now what you want to do is just do your whole entire canvas with this technique of slip slapping the two colors. Every so often you will stop and refill your brush and overlap some of those strokes. You will carry that color onto the outside edges, but for tonight, because we are limited with only an hour to be together, just paint your top. Just paint the top of the canvas. Don't worry about painting the sides. You can always come back and do this slip slap technique on the side or the edges of the canvas after the top part has been decorated. So I like to do this technique and work pretty quickly, and it will cover, because we're working with a very large flat brush, it will cover a pretty good size surface in a very short time period. So again, this is Wicker White and our coffee latte. And I just keep slipping and slapping my brush till I fill the entire canvas top. And I said before, don't worry about if you see brush strokes. We do want it to look kind of mottled. And we do want it to look where you can see almost patches of color. Don't overwork it. Don't overblend it. I keep reloading my brush as I go back to my canvas and to my wax paper palette. And I am slipping and I'm slapping. This is a really fun technique to use on a multitude of backgrounds. And when you're working with the multi-surface paints in the FolkArt line, you can do this, as I said earlier, on wood, on tin, on terracotta, on canvas, like we're doing tonight. So many surfaces can be decorated with this background technique. If you by chance are faster than me and you've already got that part done, the next thing we will do is, after we quickly slip slapped our background, use your hair dryer to quickly dry that surface, because we do want our surface to be completely dry before we begin stenciling our wreath on here. And so I'm almost done with mine. And again, just work very quickly. This is just the background. This is not the hero or the star of our show here. Our stenciling and then enhanced or embellished with painting is going to be the star or our hero. Okay, I think I kind of like where I am with mine right now. I'm going to set my brush down and excuse the noise, but I'm going to turn my hair dryer on and I'm going to dry it now. And I want you to do the same. Do we have any questions, Kira, while I had the hair dryer going? Okay, great. The nice thing about this particular technique, which we referred to as slipping and slapping that brush on the surface, is that you'll get a completely different look every time you do this, because the amount of each of the two colors that you work with is going to be completely different. And just as a contrast here, you can see between my finished one and the one I did just a moment ago, there's completely different color patterns on here, but they're both great because we can see all kinds of mottled brush strokes. And that's what we want. We want just a soft, muted, mottled, slip-slapped background. And mine is dry now. And once yours is dry, the next thing you're going to do is move on to our welcome wreath stencil. And as I mentioned, this particular design or this particular stencil is great because every time you use it, you can do different color combinations depending upon your home decor or depending upon the season. Tonight, we're doing it for the fall season. But these little berries here that you see within the design can obviously be changed for, like I said earlier, red berries for Christmas, or perhaps pink berries in the springtime. Even thinking about all greenery and green berries for St. Patrick's Day. There's so many different things you can do with this stencil. For those of you who have never stenciled before, I'm just going to work quickly tonight and tell you just a few shortcuts. When we stencil, we often like to use tape to apply a stencil or tape a stencil to a surface so that it doesn't slip around on us. Then you can use actually stencil tape, or I just grabbed some blue painter's tape tonight. And if you look at our design here, our surface is a 12 by 12 stretched canvas, but our stencil itself measures a little bit larger than that. So you just kind of want to eyeball it. And you will notice too that a little bit of the design might go off the edge of our stencil, but just kind of get the top and bottom in place, get the sides kind of centered where you want them. And then you can use a little bit of tape. I'm using mine right at the top, and I'm just going to fold it over and tape it to the side of our canvas. And like I said earlier, we painted the background on the top surface. I did not do my edges yet because that would be something that we could do later. I'm going to stencil tonight. On your stencil or on your supply list, you had a stencil brush to get. A lot of times when we stencil, we often say use one brush for every color, but tonight I'm going to do a couple different colors using the same brush. So with that stencil brush, I need to add a couple more colors out onto my wax paper palette. We're going to still work with the coffee latte, but I'm going to get my green out onto the palette. And the green that we're working with is Thicket. So I'm going to now squeeze just a little bit of Thicket out onto the palette. And I'm also going to add some pure orange. This is such a bright, cheerful color this time of year. I'm also going to add Pueblo. And Pueblo is a beautiful muted orange. It's almost like a terracotta color. So we're going to add that to the palette. And I'm going to also add our brown, and that is bark brown. I'll move this aside a little bit. I hope you can all still see my palette and all the colors I've got out for you. And one more color I think I'll add so we don't have to add it later is I'm going to add a little bit of our yellow ochre, and that's our golden yellow color. So I'll go through those colors one more time. We're working with the coffee latte. We're working with Thicket, pure orange, Pueblo, bark brown, and yellow ochre. Those are the colors that I have on my palette. And the brush that I use, my 3/4 inch flat, I just put that in the water for now. And I'm going to rinse that out real quickly and then just set that aside, because what we're going to do now is we're going to use a stencil brush for our next step. So I want to show you, oh, here I grabbed one already. What I want to show you, I'm going to show you up close. I'm hoping you can see now. We're going to work on the base of the wreath shape where you can see all these little leaves. And so we're going to do the basic outline shape of the wreath and the leaves first. So when we begin with that, we're going to start with the coffee latte. That's the same color that we used within our background. I'm going to take my stencil brush and I'm going to dip it into that puddle of paint and then tap it a couple times onto my wax paper palette. But I do not want to use it straight right now, because even though I have paint on the bottom flat surface of my brush, it's actually too much paint. So I'm now going to, on a paper towel, wipe some of that excess paint off. And I'm just, if you think about being a kid and wearing a hula hoop around your middle, that's kind of what I'm doing, is I'm hula hooping around that to remove some of that excess paint. If I didn't do this step to remove that excess color, when I get ready to stencil, I will have paint going underneath the cut edges, and I'll create a ridge or a blob of color underneath or behind. So for tonight, we're just going to load our brush, make sure it's evenly loaded, then offload. This step here is called offloading. And now what I'm going to do, when we look at this design, you'll see that there are leaves that have kind of like a rounded corner or a rounded tip. And then there are leaves that are more pointed at the tip. All of the leaves on here are all painted the same way. And what I'm going to do is hold my brush straight up and down to my surface. And I'm going to touch on the outside. I'm going to keep my brush touching on the outside of the stencil, working towards the inside. I'm going to use a circular motion, and I'm going to move my brush once I touch down and move it in a circular motion, going clockwise and counterclockwise. Can you see where I've kind of dirtied the outside of my stencil right here? This is my cut opening. I'll bring this up close. so that you can see I've started on the outside. I have not yet gone into the stencil. So it's kind of like a warm up, if you will. I'm warming up on the outside, and now I'm kind of bringing some of that color into the opening of that design. And you will see that I haven't done the full leaf. And the reason I'm doing it like a half of a leaf is we're going to come back, and can you see it's green towards the base of the leaf? So what we're going to do is go around the whole entire wreath with our coffee latte and our stencil brush, and we are going to circular motion, apply paint, and this goes pretty quickly, just to the outside edge of each of those leaves. And I want you to go ahead and circular motion, touching the outside edge or the tip edge of each of our leaves. And we're just kind of putting the color in place. You'll notice that one load of color, even though I offloaded it, I'm still getting a lot of paint to be able to stencil my entire wreath. And I learned today through our Facebook group, Let's Paint with Plaid, that a couple of our students that we're following tonight were just going to watch and take notes and follow along because they had not yet purchased their stencil. By the way, this stencil is available at Michael's or michaels.com. And like I said, this stencil is so versatile. You can use it so many times throughout the year. If you don't yet have one, you're going to want to pick this one up. If you feel like your brush has gotten starting to run dry, like you've used up all of your paint, don't be afraid to pick up some more paint, but just always remember to offload. I'm going to lift mine up so you can see part of mine. See how it's just kind of like feathered? I've got just a little bit on the tip of all of those leaves. Now I'm going to load my brush with the same color one more time. Again, that's our coffee latte on the stencil brush. I'm swirling to make sure that there's paint all the way around the bottom of the brush. I'm offloading onto a paper towel. And with that coffee latte, I'm now going to do the part that looks like the stems or the branches or the twigs that create this wreath. And so we're going to go ahead and just, again, using that circular motion, just hit the very center of our wreath. So that would be, again, like the branch or the twig. Don't worry about the base of the leaves yet. That'll be our next step. And as I'm working around, you can see I'm using my free hand. I'm right-handed, so my left hand, being my free hand, is actually helping me hold that stencil down as I move into that area. These stencils are made out of Mylar, and they can be cleaned and reused over and over and over again. Like I said, for so many different color palettes and colorways. I think I've got my leaf stems all in. All right, so now all of this is all the coffee latte. We're going to stop and wipe off most of that coffee latte onto our paper towel. We want a very, very dry brush with very little bit of that coffee latte in it. And I'm now going to pick up our green, which again is our Thicket, using the same brush, because I want that brown that's in the brush to kind of intermingle with our next color, our green. So I'm going to do the same technique. Excuse me. I'm going to tap into the puddle of paint, then tap on the palette to make sure I've got that green fully loaded on the full flat bottom portion of our brush. And then what do you think we're going to do? You're right. We're going to offload just like we did with the coffee latte. We want to have a almost dry brush to stencil. With our dark green now, I'll show you on our finished sample. We're going to, if you want to look, this is the finished sample. Can you see where there's now at the base of each of our leaves, a little bit of that green or that Thicket color blending up into the coffee latte? So again, I'm starting on the outside of my stencil, and on every single leaf, I'm going to, again, using my circular motion, moving my brush clockwise and counterclockwise, I'm moving up to where I'm overlapping. And here's a little example if you want to see it. It's very faint. It's not a very dark color. The leaves are not going to be the hero of our show. Our painting on top is going to be our hero. So we just want to get color at the base of the leaf, and we're going to let that Thicket overlap on top of our coffee latte that we've already got there. I hope y'all are having a good time. There's so many different ways to stencil, and this is just because we only have an hour together, a very quick, easy stenciling lesson. If you like stenciling and other projects, we welcome you to join our Facebook group. Plaid has a fabulous Facebook group called Let's Paint with Plaid. And occasionally we do give some stenciling lessons there in our group, in addition to our painting instructions. If you all have any questions, we do have Kira here behind the scenes helping me out tonight. Be sure and ask our questions, and Kira will pass them along. The fun thing about stenciling is you can create a very painterly look. It doesn't have to be just, I don't want to say like very geometric. It doesn't have to be very beginner looking. It doesn't have to be tacky. You can get a very clean, crisp line. And when you blend the colors like we're doing tonight, it gives you almost a hand-painted look, a very painterly look when you're stenciling. All right, I've made it all the way around my wreath, and as I lift mine up and look at it, it's looking really good. What I'd like to do now is, with the green still in my brush, any of the vines or the stems that are reaching out towards our little berries, we want to make sure that there's green on those. So just go back and take another look at that stem area where it's coming out towards a berry. And just make sure that those are filled in with green. And that green again that I'm working with is Thicket. It's a beautiful dark green color. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to, again, wipe that color off. And or if you have a baby wipe nearby, you can even use a baby wipe. And I'll show you here. Using a baby wipe, I can wipe off some of that dark green. Again, just kind of applying pressure, and think about hula hooping. I'm not really twisting to the right or twisting to the left. I'm touching down, applying pressure, and then allowing the bristles to kind of, like I said, hula hoop around. And that was removing some of that excess paint. So I can work with this now because most of that green is out of the brush. So if you're working with just one stencil brush, you could do something like this. Or if you have a second brush, you can use that as well. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to work on the welcome in the center. And we're going to start with that with the yellow ochre, the golden yellow color. So either use the one single brush where most of your paint is off. And as I said, we're going to stencil with either that or a brand new clean brush. You never want to completely immerse your brush in water to wet it completely, or immerse it in water between colors, because you want what we call a dry brush to do your stenciling. I'm going to use the same brush that I started with. I wiped it off onto my paper towel, and it really is almost a dry brush. Again, I have no paint in that brush. So I'm going to load my brush the exact same way we did before. I'm going to touch into my puddle of color. And the color again is yellow ochre. It's a golden yellow color. So I'm filling paint on the bottom flat surface of that brush. I'm tapping up and down on my waxed paper palette. And I'm now going to offload on my paper towel now. The word welcome, I'm going to show you on my finished piece here. I'm holding it up if anyone wants to take a look at your device right now. You will see that the top half of the letter is the yellow ochre. The bottom half is a orange or a Pueblo color. It's a very much of an ombre. If you want to do that, that's how I'm going to teach it tonight, but you can also do it all one entire color of your choice if you like. So what I'm going to do to create that ombre is I'm going to stencil the top half of each letter, kind of like we did the top half of our leaves. Again, I'm using a circular motion, moving my brush clockwise and counterclockwise. I am using yellow ochre on the top half of each of the letters that spell out welcome. I'm moving clockwise, counterclockwise, and I started on the left, moving towards the right. However, you could start on the right, moving towards the left. Either way, you want to get just the top half of the word welcome stenciled in. The next thing I'm going to do is just wipe off some of that gold, and I'm going to pick up pure orange. Pure orange is our bright, cheerful orange color. Same way, loading that stencil brush, tapping on the palette to make sure we're fully loaded in the brush, and then offload onto the paper towels. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but that's the key to successful stenciling, is making sure that you offload all that excess paint. The bottom half of each of our letters here is now going to be stenciled with this pure orange. Again, I'm starting on the outside of the stencil, working in towards the cut areas, and I am going to stencil the bottom half of each of those letters. Again, moving my brush clockwise and counterclockwise as I move across the word welcome. And while I still have a brush loaded with pure orange, I'm going to very quickly go ahead and stencil or color in every single one of our berries. And I'm going to do the full entire circle of the berry. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 berries throughout our design. I think I've got them all. 9 berries. So again, this was the same stencil brush. I loaded it the same way with pure orange, tapped on the palette, offloaded onto my paper towel. I stenciled using a circular motion all of the letters, the bottom half of each letter with the pure orange. The top half was the yellow ochre. And then I stenciled each of our, I think we said 9 berries with the pure orange. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to deepen that just a little bit by picking up our Pueblo. Pueblo is that burnt orange or a terracotta type color. It's a beautiful color. I'm loading the brush, tapping on the palette, offloading onto the paper towel. And I'm not going to do the full bottom half, but maybe just the bottom quarter of each of our letters. Again, using that same circular motion. And I am adding some shading, even a little bit deeper on our lettering. While I still have my brush loaded with the Pueblo, again, that's our beautiful burnt orange or terracotta type color. Each of our berries are also shaded a little bit, and I'm going to just on the bottom area, not the full half of each berry, but just the bottom little portion of each berry. I'm going to add a little bit of that Pueblo on top of that pure orange. And when you lift your stencil, you're going to be amazed to see how beautiful that shading is. And that is all we're going to do for our stenciling part tonight. So once you're up at this point, you can go ahead and lift your stencil. If you've taped it on the edge, go ahead and completely untape it from your surface. Now this stencil is dirty. It can be cleaned. And so if you wanted to take the time later, you can go to your sink and rinse it with water and soap. Or you can also use, like we did a minute ago, a great way to clean your stencils is, and I like to clean my stencils because I like to keep them and reuse them over and over and over again. This is just a normal baby wipe, and I can take that baby wipe and move across the stencil again in that circular motion, and you will see that I am cleaning up that residue of the paint on there. Another great thing to clean a stencil, by chance, if you've let your paint sit a little bit longer than normal, hand sanitizer, a little pump of hand sanitizer on your stencil, and a clean stencil brush dipped into the hand sanitizer and then stenciled over that paint residue. That hand sanitizer, can you see how quickly that is removing that dried acrylic paint? It's really working it into the stencil itself. I can then take a paper towel or my baby wipe and remove that again. So these stencils are great in that they can be cleaned and reused over and over and over again. So if you want to take the time now, fine. If you want to wait till after class this evening, by all means do that too. That stencil can be cleaned and reused over and over and over again. Now we have the base of what we're going to do tonight. And you'll see in the stencil, the word welcome has some spaces in between. And that helps us when they are designing and cutting the stencils to be able to keep it all in one piece. However, when you look at my sample here, you'll see that I do not have those breaks in mind, because what I did was I came back with my liner brush, and depending upon where the color was, if it was at the bottom, I used our Pueblo. If it was towards the top of the letter, I used the gold that we worked with, which was our yellow ochre. So using a liner brush, and I'm going to just start with my yellow ochre, the top of the letter, where the W is running into the E, I just connected that. And where the E, it has a few breaks, I connected it. So if you want to make yours look more hand painted versus stenciled, you can fill in those break marks. This is an option. You don't necessarily have to, but I just think it gives it more of a hand painted finished look. And this, again, can be done very, very quickly. I'm just kind of, if you will, filling in the gaps. I'm painting in those break lines. Then once I did that with the yellow ochre on the top, I can pick up a little bit of the Pueblo, which was our deep shading color, and I can fill in the spaces at the bottom of each letter. And if it looks like it's not the bottom of the letter, a couple of them connect towards the middle, that you might want to pick up the pure orange rather than the Pueblo. And I think I'm going to go back where the M meets the E at the very end of our word welcome. I think that's more of a yellow ochre connection there. And I'm going to pick up some pure orange where the first E meets our L. E meets L. So I just feel like that gives you a more hand-painted look versus seeing the stenciled breaks. Okay, let's get going and let's have some fun with our flowers that we're going to paint within the wreath. If you look at mine here, I'm going to share with you that I have 3 clusters. You can see I have one here towards the upper right, or if you think of this as a face of a clock, let's say between 1 and 2 o'clock is where I have one group of flowers. And then opposite from it, and again, thinking of the face of a clock, over here between, let's say 10 and 11 o'clock, I have another group of flowers. And then at the bottom here, between 5 and 6 o'clock, there is another cluster, a group of flowers. These flowers may look very difficult to paint. I'm going to show you a detail up close, but let me tell you, this is the easiest, simplest beginner style flower anyone can ever paint. We're going to go ahead and grab a small flat brush. And depending upon the size flower petal you want, it can be anything from a size 4, a size 6, or all the way up to like an 8 or even a 12 flat brush, depending upon, again, how big of a petal you want to make. And so I'm going to start behind my flower grouping, and I'm going to work in sections like I showed you. I'm going to start with the darkest color, working towards the top of our group of flowers, and do the lightest color last. So on my darkest color in the flowers is going to be our Pueblo, which is that dark terracotta, burnt orange type color. And the brush I'm using, if you want to know mine, I went to a number 6. I just pulled a number 6 flat. So tonight I'm going to work with a little bit smaller petal flower, and I'm stroking into that puddle of paint. I'm not just going in and scooping up paint. I'm filling that brush both sides. I flipped it over with that paint. And now what I'm going to do, I brought a little piece of paper here. Let me flip my supply list over to the back. If you'll look at our little flower here, it's just simply, if you think about a plus sign. So we're going to touch down and stroke once, twice, 3 times, and 4 times. Can you see that it's like a plus, top, bottom, left, right? And then it's okay that it doesn't completely touch in the middle. Or if you want it to touch in the middle, you'll do the same thing again. I'm touching, pulling, touching, pulling, touching, pulling, touching, pulling. And now that's a little bit closer. Our little flowers are simply little strokes that look like a plus sign. And later we're going to come back and we're going to dot the middle. So that's what we're going to do to start our flower cluster. And we are going to, again, start with the dark color underneath. And we're just going to think about, again, in this empty or void space right here, I'm going to just touch, push, touch, pull, touch, pull. And then I'm going to do that several times, leaving a little space between them. And depending upon how busy or how full you want your little flower clusters, you're just going to, I got mine started. If you want to look here, just kind of hit or miss or random within that space. We don't want 100% all filled. We want space because this is only the first color within our flower grouping. So on mine here, I've got 2, 4, 5. I have 5 little petals. And now I'm going to move over to this section over here. And you are painting directly on top of part of what you've already stenciled. That was a base, and now we are embellishing our stencil design with this painted flower grouping. And this, again, everything I'm teaching you tonight is so simple and very easy. And don't worry about trying to make perfect strokes. We're just making a painted plus sign, and we're applying color with that flat of the brush. And now I'm going to do my last little grouping down in here where, and of course you can add more flowers if you want, but I just kind of left mine in clusters. And when I'm doing the painted plus sign, I tend to apply pressure at the beginning of my stroke and then kind of ease up and use less pressure as I'm pulling towards the center of my flower. These do not have to be exact. This is very free form. And like I said, people of all ages can paint this type of a flower. It's so simple. This is just the base of our grouping of flowers. When you look at it, you don't want it to be like a full oval circle. You want it to be kind of free form. Some can overlap each other, and you want it to kind of just fill in a basic space, but you also want to have a little air space between them. I've got mine done. I'm going to share with you mine up close, the first step, I should say. So if anyone wants to look, you're welcome to look. The next thing we're going to do with this same color, I'm going to pretend on the outer edges that I might have a portion of a flower showing. So I might just pull in 2 little strokes. And over here, I might just pull in 2 little strokes. So can you see right here, I just added 2 strokes to the outside and 2 strokes to the outside, like half of a blossom, if you will. I don't want to get carried away and add too many of those, but just a few of them here and there on the outside edges of this little flower cluster that we painted. No question, y'all must be doing well and following right along. I cannot wait to see all of the painted welcome wreaths. I know that the hashtags are being posted within our group. Be sure and post on your social media. Make it with Michael's or Michael's, what was the other one? Make it with Michael's. Yes, and of course Plaid Crafts and Let's Paint Challenge. That's also a great one. Share your paintings within our group. All right, now I think that's all I'm going to do with the terracotta color. And next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with our yellow ochre. You could even do another layer with a few of, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Let's do it. Pure orange, just a couple here and there, not as many. And the pure orange, it will just add a little bit of brightness within our group. And you can paint on top of or next to some that you've already added. That pure orange is just going to be a little bit of a pop of color in the center You can also add a couple of those half strokes of the pure orange to the outside edges. All right. Now I'm going to wipe my brush. I didn't really clean it out, but I'm just wiping it onto my paper towel here. And now I'm going to load with the golden yellow color, which is our yellow ochre. I'm filling both sides of the flat brush, just like I've done every color so far. And I'm going to show you my finished one again. Can you see that there is some gold within the flower grouping? That's our next step. We're going to add our yellow ochre flowers. And again, as we're doing this, you can see we're kind of building up to the lightest value color on top. So while I have my brush loaded with the yellow ochre, I'm going to add, again, still working with those kind of plus signs, add some flowers, adding to our little cluster. And as we're doing this, we're filling in more of the space, and we're also kind of filling in a little bit more of that air that we had from our very first location of the Pueblo. This is almost kind of like a little dot of paint or a little dab of paint, these little plush signs. It's not a specific brush stroke per se. That's why this is the perfect flower that anyone of any skill level can have fun with. I love it when children enjoy painting this particular style of flower because it's so doable. I'm not going to clean my brush after I did the last yellow ochre stroke because I'm going to now pick up some white, and I need to add a little more white to my palette. Most of mine was used up on the base coat. That again is wicker white, and I have my brush filled with some yellow ochre. I don't need to necessarily clean that right now. I'm just going to pull out some of that wicker white to make like a lighter value gold in my brush. And I'm going to add just a few, not very many, of that lighter gold color in our flower cluster. I'm going to show you up close on the one I just painted, adding just a few of that white plus yellow ochre to make a lighter value gold. I'm again still using that same little touch, press, pull, and lift, creating a little plus sign, if you will. If you want to add some of those partial petals like we did on the other colors, you can do that also with this color. And as you are painting this, again, you want them kind of randomly placed around. They're not directly on top of each other. They're kind of next to each other. And you just have to be careful not to get too carried away. I'm going to add some outside petals here and there. I'm going to add a little bit, one more right in here. All right. I am cleaning my flat brush now. And I'm going to now go back to the liner brush that we used to kind of fill in the breaks of our word welcome. And with this, I'm now going to fill my liner brush. I'm going to get it wet with some water and bring some water over to our dark green, and that is Thicket. And can you see I'm pulling the paint out? It's a little bit more runny now. It's becoming more fluid in consistency. It's not as thick and rich and creamy as FolkArt itself is. I'm thinning it down because what I want to do now, I'm going to show you on my finished one here. With the liner brush filled with the dark green, which again is Thicket, I'm going to show you. Can you see there's like a stroke in the middle of our leaves coming down into like the vine of our wreath? We're going to start in the middle of that stroke, and we're going to touch and then just pull it down. Touch and pull it down. So we're connecting now all of our leaves to our little stem or twig. So just work through all the way around that circle and be sure and turn your work if it's easier for you to turn that work. I am making sure that my paint is thinned with water so it's more fluid. And here's a couple that I just did on mine if you want to take a quick look. I started in the middle of the leaf and I stroked towards the stem or the vine of our wreath. The middle of the leaf, touch, apply pressure, and then just kind of quickly pull and drag that color into that stem area or vine area. And I did all of my strokes in the same direction going around our wreath. So you're just kind of going around in a circle. My liner brush filled with Thicket that's been thinned to a thinner, more fluid consistency. This stencil is so beautiful by itself, but look at how beautiful it really becomes once you start embellishing and adding strokes to it. To me, the colors kind of pop, it comes to life. And the embellishment of our flowers and extra details on our leaves just really helps us jump off of the canvas. The stroke again, I'm just starting with a brush filled with my thin fluid Thicket. I'm touching the middle of the leaf and pulling towards the stem or the shape of the wreath. And you can do that also on the berries. Now the berries, I have a dot at the base of each berry. Can you see this one right here? I put a little dot of our Thicket at the base of that berry. Here's another one where I just kind of painted a little circle at the base of each berry. And then I'm going to pull a little bit of stroke down. Again, same thing. I'm touching where that circle is. Oops. Touching where the circle is on the berry and then pulling down into the stem. I hope you all are having a good time tonight. It's always fun to think about how many people might be here in the classroom watching. And I cannot wait to see your work. Be sure and save it by taking a picture and posting it in our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. Use all the hashtags that were noted in our meeting tonight or in our classroom tonight. All right. I think that's good enough for our leaves now. The next step I want to do is I'm going to teach you how to paint a very small, let me show you here. Can you see these purple little, almost like a little weed that's in our little wreath as a filler flower? This is done by a pure orange stem, and then the purple that we're working with, we don't have out on our palette just yet. That is Violet Pansy. So I'm going to use my liner brush, same technique, and then I want to thin it with a little bit of water. So I'm going to dip my brush, it's clean. I removed that Thicket from it. I'm going to dip it in some water, and I'm going to come over to my pure orange, and I'm going to thin it down again. We want that paint to be fluid, so it kind of flows from my liner brush. So make sure you get it nice and thin with some water. And what I'm going to do is just every so often where you feel you need a little bit of filler, and I kind of did mine in sections of 2. When I'm holding mine, if you care to look at it, here's 2 little stems here. Down here, there's 2 little stems, and they're not straight soldiers. They are arcing. Can you see that there's a bend to them? So wherever you want to add this little filler twig or weed, you're going to start and pull out. So I'm pulling out. I'm starting at the wreath itself and I'm pulling out. And remember, these are not straight sticks. There's just a little bit of a arc to them. And I'm doing, when I look at mine, I did one coming out from both sides of each of the flowers. So our flower clusters are going to get a little bit longer or a little bit fuller. So I'm going to pull a little stem out from both sides of our little flower ovals here. I know this might look like an awful lot of orange right now, but believe me, it will get toned down once we add our purple to it. So this step again was my liner brush, thinned down some pure orange, and at the outside edge of each of my flower clusters, I pulled a line that came out. I did 2 lines and both of them kind of arced, one in one direction, one in the other. Using that liner brush that's now clean, I removed the pure orange color. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that pure orange. I'm sorry, pick up a little bit of our purple that we put out on the color palette. And that purple is called Violet Pansy. It's a gorgeous color for this time of year. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you real close first. I'm going to start on the edge or the very tip of that yellow stem. And I'm just going to touch, pull, touch, pull. So I'm going to start on the tip and then go along one side of my orange stem and then go along the other side of my orange stem. So if I can show you here real quick, let's pretend this is our orange stem. I'm starting on the tip and I'm just going to touch, press, touch, press, touch, press. It's a very quick motion and it doesn't necessarily even have to touch the stem. Once I go down one side, I'll then repeat it on the other side. Touch, press, touch, press, touch, press. And when I'm all said and done, it's going to give us the look. I'm showing you one more time if you care to look at your monitors. It's going to give us that kind of a twiggy weed, if you will, that's going to be like a filler. So I started on the tip of my pure orange, touch pressing, and just going to add some flowers or even little purple leaves at the end of each of these little weeds. Start at your tip and then work along one side of that orange stem and turn your work if you find that's easier. And I'm going to do it on both sides all the way down that orange stem. This is not a difficult step. And like I said, I'm not working on a specific brush stroke. I'm just touching and pulling and lifting and pressing. I'm touching and then pressing and then pulling and lifting really quick. They're very short, choppy little strokes. And as you're doing it, you're probably noticing that the more pressure you use on the brush when you first touch the canvas, the thicker your little leaf is going to be. If you use very little pressure, the thinner your leaf is going to be. Touch, press, touch, press. And I do stop and fill my brush up every so often too. So I want a good filled brush. This paint is not thinned with the water like we thinned it to make the stem. This is full body, full strength. I think this purple really is just a fun accent to our wreath. Think about this stencil accented at Christmas time. We talked about the berries being red, but gosh, you could add a painted poinsettia in the middle. Summertime, you can add maybe daisies as a summer flower, paint roses. There's so many things you can do to embellish this design Think about adding sunflowers in the beginning of the fall season. Add pumpkins. I've done this stencil painting pumpkins on it as well. And little hanging gourds. This is such a fun stencil that can be embellished so many different ways. I'm almost done. I think I've got 2 more of these little stems yet to go. Touch, press, touch, press, touch, press, pull, lift, short, choppy little strokes. The more paint you have on your brush, the more pressure you use, the bigger the little leaf or berry or little petal, whatever you want to think of this as being our little filler flower here, filler weed. All right. Now, while I still have this purple in my liner brush, I'm going to go back and dot the centers of my flowers. And you can use the liner brush to actually paint like a little dot circle. You could also use a tool that's an artist stylist, and you can dip, or a dead ballpoint pen, and you can dip that into the paint and add a little dot of color. I just dotted 2 of mine right here using a stylist. I dipped into the handle, and let me see if I can find one here. And then you just touch, and you can make like a small little dot circle, or you can even still work with the liner brush. Let's see, where's one? I'm holding it up high. I can hardly see. Am I on camera? Yes. Or you can even just dot it with your liner brush. So you want to go back through now, wherever we have the flowers that are clustered here, all of our clusters, we're going to kind of find what was the center of each of our little flowers and give them a little bit of a purple center. If you don't like purple, you can pick up our darker brown, which is the bark brown. That would be a pretty flower center too. The purple is just such a fun fall accent. And we are almost done with this project. I'm going to tell you a couple more quick things. It's a lot to try and get accomplished, I know, at your end as well as mine in an hour's time frame, but I do hope you are having fun and will enjoy finishing your project if you don't have yours done at this point. Excuse me. I'm now going to very quickly pick up a little bit of a small flat brush and a little bit of some coffee latte. So I've wet my brush with water. I've touched my paper towel to blot off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to side load, picking up just a little bit of the coffee latte on one corner of that brush. If you want to give what we call a cast shadow to each of your letters in the word welcome here, I'll hold it up high. Can you see on the left-hand side of each, not the dark line, but just that faded look? It's like what we call a cast shadow. You can come holding that flat brush with the coffee latte towards the letter. You can come and just put like a little bit of wash of color on the outside. Just shadow each of the left side of each of our letters with a little bit of that coffee latte. Make sure that you just put a little bit of paint on that flat brush. You don't want to make a big wide stripe. And go around each of the letters on the left-hand side. This is just creating a little bit of a shadow and a little dimension. Our letters are going to stand out that much more now. Having that little bit of a coffee latte, like a wash of color, if you will, on the left-hand side and bottom of each of our letters that we've already stenciled. I'm making sure that there is moisture in my brush And I've got it filled with the coffee latte. And just floated that color or washed that color on the left-hand side and bottom of each of our letters. One more thing we'll do to our letters. I'm going to work with my liner brush again this time, and I'm going to go to the bark brown. That's our dark brown color we have not yet used. I'm thinning that paint down with a little bit of water. Again, we want it to be more of a fluid consistency. And now I'm going to go around the left-hand side and bottom again of each of our letters, and I'm going to carry that color as a line this time. Here, I'll show you on my finished one here. And that is right, it's almost like you're dividing that line between that wash that we just did and the stenciled letter. So again, that's my liner brush and bark brown. And I am going to outline with a little bit of darker color each of these sections. Again, I'm using the bottom of each letter and the left-hand side. And I'm using just the tip of my liner brush to outline the letter. This will give you, again, some more dimension. And make our letters stand out that much more. So again, that's the left side and the bottom of each letter. I used that same dark brown color with a good flat brush to shade our corners. If you can see on the finished sample here, all four corners are kind of like darkened. And what happens when you do something like that is you're drawing the eye's attention towards the center. So we're seeing more of our wreath and our welcome and less of a light color. If you can see here, see how my eye is on this one is drawn towards my center. So with my large flat brush that we started our canvas with, I'm going to now dip into or side load into that puddle of bark brown. That's our darker brown color. And I'm now going to just kind of paint some on. A little piece of glitter came on there. Just paint some of that on the edge here. I'm patting that color on. No water in my brush, just the solid paint. And I'm kind of darkening or almost like an antique look. I'm kind of antiquing or darkening the corners here of each of my four corners. And can you see here the difference between this side and this side? This, and you may prefer this look, but doing something like that where you darken your edges is going to help the eye draw more towards the center. So you'll want to do that on all four corners. And the very last step, I used a toothbrush. And what I'm going to do with my toothbrush is I'm going to fly speck or splatter paint a little bit of our dark purple, which again is our violet pansy. I'm going to use some water in my toothbrush. I'm going to come over to my puddle of the purple and pull some of that paint out. And can you see how runny and thin that color is becoming because of the water that I had in my toothbrush bristles? I'm now going to just do a test run. And you can test, there's so many different ways to fly speck. Some people are two-handed and they will do one and let the bristles run across their finger, and you can see how the paint is kind of spattering out from there. Some people prefer to do it all with one hand and use their forefinger here and let it spatter this way. Some people prefer to even get it full of paint and then use a paintbrush to tap, and you get bigger splatters that way. So it just depends upon your comfort level, whether you want to get your paint or your hands in the paint or not. But we want to thin down some of this violet pansy with water to a very runny consistency. Load up our toothbrush and then test off either on your palette or onto a paper towel, and make sure that they are the size speckles that you want. The more water you have, the bigger the speckle. The more dry your bristles are, less water you have, the smaller the little splatters are going to be. And what we're going to do is we're just going to splatter within the wreath and let some of these little flecks of color fall right out onto the painted flower, onto our painted wreaths, the stenciling of the leaves, and just very lightly go around the circle. And that is all we're going to do to that little fly speck. And believe me, that just adds such a beautiful finish to your painted design. The very last thing you'll want to do is you'll want to sign your name. And on mine, I used my liner brush to sign my name, but I like to do my signature in a very inconspicuous area, and rather than bold at the bottom here. And I have mine worked up into the wreath. So you can see here, mine says Chris Williams right there. So I kind of hid mine amongst some of the design, but that's the very last thing you'll want to do is sign your name. And once you've done that, you have then completed your stenciled welcome wreath. Do we have any last minute questions, Kira? Wow. Yes. Yeah. Well, I did not do it tonight because of our time's sake that we have together. Mine here is not finished. However, my sample here, I did use that flat brush slip slap technique first on the edges. And the very last step where I showed you how to darken the corners, I darkened my corners here too. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, everybody just had a great class. So thank you all for joining us. I know that Ash had put the information about watching the class after on michaels.com. And don't forget to check out our Facebook page, Let's Paint with Plaid, and hashtag your projects.
Yes. Thank you all for joining me this evening. I hope you had lots of fun, and I cannot wait to see your stenciled and painted wreath.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.